The reason escaping life sounds so good is because you believe it's going to grant you an emotional freedom that you don't already have in your everyday life. What we mistake, though, is that we believe a cabin in the woods is going to create a difference in our inner state to the degree that us, as a sort of conscious awareness, couldn't do in any environment. For about 99.5% of the population, a cabin in the woods is not going to be the answer that's truly going to fulfill them. And this is sort of the avoidant isolation type of healing that is masked instead of a true, authentic, emotional healing. Because in truth, we have what we need inside of us, and we have the power to revolutionize our lives from an inner perspective and not just based on the way our environment is set up around us. Of course, environment is always going to play a factor, and we can't be negligent. We should do everything in our power to create an environment that allows us to feel peace, to feel joy, and to discover ourselves in a multitude of ways. But to believe that a cabin in the woods or isolating yourself and escaping life is going to provide that for you is kind of cutting off a branch and not addressing the root problem. Because you can travel all over the world, you can go to the furthest country from you right now, and still you'll be met with that same sort of feeling that you're trying to escape right now. A lot of us, we want to escape life many times because of the expectations others have of us, of our current environment. It's important to not let emotion blind us to the sort of facts that are existing at play. So if our current environment isn't suited to us, if our current social circle isn't, you know, helping us in a way that we feel more happy and more at peace, then is the answer really to not have these things at all? Is the answer really to escape socialization? Is the answer really isolation as a rebellion from other people's expectations? Or is the answer transforming these things in a different way? Is the answer surrounding yourselves with different people? Is the answer, not allowing the expectations of others to determine the direction and path of your life? And what do we notice? These two things that I just mentioned, they require a degree of difficulty and inconvenience. Isolating and escaping life, a cabin in the woods, that's the easy path. It doesn't sound easy because of all the other factors that are at play. It sounds somewhat reasonable if you look at it from, I guess, a certain lens. But if you're being really honest with yourself, if you could have friends that supported you, if you could have friends that made you feel joyful and happy, if you could have that relationship, if you could have that certain life dynamic, would you choose that instead of the cabin in the woods? And if your answer is you would still choose a cabin in the woods, then by all means try it and get back to me and let me know how it goes. But for most of us, what we're searching for is a transformation of life and not a sort of exiting of it completely. A cabin in the woods sounds nice because it represents itself as a sort of nirvana and escape away from the daily struggles that we have right now. But when we investigate this further, a lot of this sort of escaping, a lot of this sort of rebellion from any sort of structure is really because of our inability to acknowledge that what we really want is going to take a lot of difficulty. It's going to take a lot of inconvenience. For example, if your social setting is set up in a certain way that you're not satisfied with, if your friends you feel like aren't really your friends, if your relationships, you don't feel like they value you, whatever it may be, it sounds a lot more efficient to escape into isolation, into hibernation on your own with a cabin in the woods. That sounds like the easier and more efficient answer. But really, what you really want in your heart is probably relationships that actually fulfill you and friendships that actually challenge you to become better and enjoy yourself and make something of your life. Now, what's that second example going to take from us? It's going to take a more difficult path. It's going to take us putting ourselves out there and bearing the judgment of others as we do so. It's going to take us leaving our comfort zone and feeling the awkwardness, the tense weirdness as we're unsure how others perceive us. That's what people are running from. It's not that people are running from life. They're running from the challenge of actually improving and transforming their lives in a dramatic way. And we're doing the same things with our inner process as well. We don't want to feel the difficult and sort of rugged and ugly and dark emotions inside of us. So we believe that changing an environment and sort of escaping life altogether will nullify these emotions when, if anything, they're probably going to suppress them even more and create an even greater divide inside of yourself. We as humans thrive in community. And the reason many people want to escape now, I believe, is because they don't feel sufficiently satisfied with their community. And what it's going to take to find one's community is living in a way that is authentic. It's living in a way that is outside of their comfort zone. It's living in a way that's going to challenge them to be more personable, to be more open to people that they've never met before. And that sounds like a mountain that you have to climb. It sounds like an unbearable challenge that, you'll never actually be able to accomplish. But this is the entire idea that's keeping us trapped. That's why I said you're cutting off a branch of the tree. You're not actually addressing the root problem. Because sure, a cabin in the woods will give you peace, but how long until that peace turns into loneliness? How long until that solitude turns into madness? What we're going to find is isolation is not a replacement for the built-in challenges that exist in feeling satisfied with one's life. The sort of game of life and how it's set up, it doesn't necessarily reward escaping the entire game itself. Even those who travel the world on their own and become sort of comfortable in their aloneness, what we're seeing is they're traveling the world, they're visiting all these different countries and cultures, but they're not alone. They're not escaping life. Traveling and going to these different countries, even if they're on their own, that's a challenge. And challenges are built into life. Life is challenging. That's the aspect of life that we can't ignore. I think now, especially because we have a lot of time to think, many of us have a sort of applied comfort to life. We have times to be our own sort of biggest enemy. And we love to blame other people. We love to blame environments. And of course, they play a role. I'm not trying to minimize how much toxic relationships and toxic environments can play a role in our well-being. But at what point do we accept accountability? And at what point do we realize that we have the power to change our emotional state? At what point do we realize how much of an influence we have over our own life? At what point do we realize that our choices are powerful and that through our decisions we can actually make a change? When that idea comes up of a certain comfort that is associated with isolation or a cabin in the woods, I challenge you to push back on that idea. If your life can look any sort of way, your dream life, your dream setup, what does it look like? Don't settle for a cabin in the woods. If you could have complete creative control over your life, who's standing beside you? Where are you living? Even how much money are you making? Whatever the case may be. What does your house look like? Whatever it may be. What's the answer to that question? And if the answer truly isn't a cabin in the woods in the deepest part of your heart and in the deepest truth of your essence, then that idea of a cabin in the woods that you keep clinging to and that idea of isolation and escaping life, that's an avoidant behavior. And the very thing you're trying to escape inside of you, the very fear, the very anger, frustration with life, you're giving it all of your power by choosing to isolate and escape life. By making that choice, by doing that avoidant behavior, you're basically surrendering the game. You're surrendering the fight to all of those dark feelings that you've been battling for so long. You're telling your mind, you're telling all the cells in your body, I'm not strong enough to overcome my own self while endued in the process of life. Amidst the madness of everyday life, I am not powerful and I am not capable enough to transform myself and therefore influencing and transforming my reality. In my opinion, an escape from life, a sort of isolation, is throwing in the towel. It's waving the white flag. Not always the case, but most of the case. And what's blocking us is we believe that whatever emotional sort of disruptions we're going through, whatever chaos is going on inside of us, we believe that that is a sufficient defense and a sufficient wall to keep us from the life that you just dreamed about, from the house that you just imagined, the relationship you just imagined, the friends you just imagined, whatever it may be. Whether you imagine yourself in a beach or still in a beautiful nature, but surrounded with your fellow community and like-minded people. We believe that the emotional struggle, the psychological struggle, and the things that we find difficult in life, we find that a sufficient barrier and wall to prevent us from achieving that life that we dream of. Peace and happiness is not going to be found in matching that exact dream life. You know, a person might surprise you, an environment might surprise you. You might find fulfillment and happiness in places you would have never imagined and in conversations with people you would have never expected. But we do find happiness, we do find satisfaction in life out of overcoming ourselves, out of mastering our thoughts, out of mastering letting go of our emotions, overcoming, growing, evolving. This is what we find satisfaction in. And if we need to keep a vision of a dream life to keep us going, then so be it. If we need to keep a vision of anything to keep us going, then so be it. But the answer is not escape. The answer is not leave it all on the table. The answer is not walk away from it all. The answer is transform your life in a way where the things in your day-to-day life are now assisting you in becoming a better version of yourself. It all starts within ourselves. And avoidant behaviors are so normalized, I think, in today's culture and in society because it's become such a cliche to sort of paint life as something that is inherently bad, inherently difficult. And I think, you know, when we start to own our own power and we start to realize not only the power of our minds as a tool, but the power of our conscious awareness in changing our state of being and therefore changing our reality, we start to understand that, yes, sure, life is difficult. Life does inherently have challenges, but life is also capable of creating such amazing things for us. And by not running away from the difficulties, by not running away from the challenges, by understanding we are capable of overcoming difficult things, we will soon see that the answer was never escaping, but the answer was becoming a version of ourselves that is capable of overcoming whatever challenges lay in front of us. And you will be met with an ocean and a current of momentum once you start living in this way. Because reality isn't against you, it's neutral. Bad things happen. Nobody can deny that. The struggles in your life, nobody can undermine that. Nobody can undervalue that. But the answer simply is, what are we going to make of our life? And if the answer is a cabin in the woods, truly in the deepest of your heart, and you wish to spend those years alone, and you think that that will truly satisfy you, then do as your path deems and find out for yourself. You can never take anyone else's word for it, but you can take your own brutal, honest truth into account. It's very difficult to not have a conversation with ourselves, but examine our desires and our wantings out of our life without taking fear, anxiety, trauma, triggers, all of these things into account. If we knew that none of those things were going to be a factor, if we knew that our life wasn't going to be sabotaged by our fears or anxieties, what then would our life look like? What would we be striving and what would we be doing to improve our lives right now? So many of us are caught in the web of prior conditioning and being ruled by fear, anxiety, and trauma. We don't even realize how much of our life has been shaped around these very emotions. Our entire perspective is being ruled by these things. So much so that now we want to throw in the towel. We want to escape the game of life because we have created a narrative that we don't think that we are capable of overcoming the difficulties that are endued in our life. The people who I truly, enjoy reading from, enjoy learning from, I see them as sort of, and I've talked about the concept of an alchemist, not in the form of raw materials, but a sort of psychological and reality bending creative alchemist in that sort of way, if you know what I mean. And it's because they turn the everyday mundane of their lives and they transform them into something special. They see that there's nowhere to escape, there's nothing to escape, and that if they can make the most of the very present moment, if they can see that they themselves are a signal, a sign, a catalyst, they are a powerful force capable of influencing reality in a very real way, everything can change. And that's the truth. Going outside of your comfort zone, breaking beyond limitations, doing things that you never thought you would do, simply by overcoming your own self, overcoming your own fear and anxiety. That's all you have to do. Not only do we create a narrative of what we're capable of, we create an idea of our restrictions. We see someone on TV or we see someone successful and we believe that we are sort of destined to be normal. We are destined to be average. And you can take a different form of these words and, you could bend the word success, you can bend the word average. What does it all mean? All of it is just sort of societal ideas that we give meaning to. The real form of success is, are you satisfied and are you okay with your life? Do you feel peace? Do you feel satisfied? And each and every one of us can create an environment, can create a reality, and most importantly, can create a state of being within ourselves in which our life is something that we are gladly able to enjoy. So as you move through life, as you move through your healing journey, acknowledge how much of your desires, how much of your wantings are rooted in things you don't want to happen rather than things you truly want. And in that, when you are met with fear and anxiety, when you are met with triggers, when you are met with trauma, create room for it, move through it, and take whatever actions that you would if that fear and anxiety wasn't a factor. That's how you align with a version of yourself where those things don't play a part. That's where that dream life starts to feel real. And actually, that's where life starts to feel like a dream, a synchronistic dream, because we're finally allowing our true self to come through. Our inner child is starting to blossom. None of these things are holding us back anymore. That's the true wake-up call. That's how we escape truly. We escape through transforming our lives. We don't escape by throwing in the towel and quitting the game completely. If you guys enjoyed this episode and you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe. If you're listening on Spotify, thank you for listening. You guys can shop my books at Amazon.com or shop-kinzer.com. Kinzer MB on all platforms. Love you guys. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.